Just imagine, Biden has authorized Ukraine to strike Russia with American ATACMS missiles. These missiles can destroy targets over 186 miles away. It's like firing from Kursk and hitting Moscow's outskirts without even moving. In short, Ukraine now has a tool that could turn the tide of the war in a matter of seconds. And this isn't just rumors or politics, it's a game-changing reality. Here's how it happened. Biden finally gave the green light, allowing Ukrainian forces to use these missiles against the occupiers. Honestly, when I first heard this, I couldn't believe it. It's like having a superweapon that can change everything with a single strike. And that weapon is ATACMS.
We recognized a need to develop a unitary type of warhead instead of the bombless that could minimize the collateral damage on the targets that we were going after.
These missiles aren't just powerful, they're incredibly precise, capable of hitting a tank or an ammunition depot from hundreds of miles away. What does this mean? Everything. Russians can no longer feel safe even far behind the front lines. Let's break down what this system's all about. ATACMS stands for Army Tactical Missile System. It was specifically designed to quickly strike critical targets at long distances. Its range depends on the version, anywhere from 100 to over 186 miles. Another key fact, these missiles can be launched from standard platforms like HIMARS or M270. That means Ukraine already has the systems to operate ATACMS without needing additional training or infrastructure. As for the technical details, the missile travels at over Mach 1, approximately 767 miles per hour. And its warhead weighs up to 1,235 pounds. It can carry either a cluster payload for targeting multiple objectives or a unitary warhead designed to destroy fortified structures. Thanks to GPS guidance, the margin of error is minimal, just a few yards, even at maximum range.
Manipulated such that we were able to change the downward slope on the vertical end of the...
This isn't just a powerful weapon, it's a true nightmare for the enemy. The Russians won't even realize what hit them before their supply depots, command centers, or equipment are obliterated. Why is this so important? Here's the deal. The war has dragged on, and all these so-called red lines have only slowed down meaningful action. Ukraine isn't just fighting for itself, it's fighting for the entire civilized world. Meanwhile, Russia keeps threatening, blackmailing, and committing horrific, senseless acts. And then the U.S. stepped in and said, enough. They handed Ukraine the missiles and basically said, take care of business. It's like giving a friend the keys to a sports car and saying, floor it, buddy, the road is yours. But there's more. Many people worry about Russia's threats to use nuclear weapons or spark World War III. It's definitely alarming. People fear that supporting Ukraine might trigger uncontrollable escalation. Russia has repeatedly claimed it would use nuclear weapons in response if it feels threatened. But you know what's interesting? It all seems more like bluffing and manipulation. First off, Russia simply lacks the resources for a full-scale nuclear war. Their economy is crumbling under sanctions, and their industry is barely keeping up with the demand for conventional weapons. For example, modern nuclear warheads require regular maintenance, but due to funding shortages, many of Russia's facilities are in critical condition. Secondly, the international community has long made it clear that the use of nuclear weapons is a red line for the entire world, not just Ukraine or the U.S., even China and India, which have previously avoided openly condemning Moscow, have repeatedly hinted that they would not support such a move. And third, history shows that Russia often uses nuclear threats as a fear tactic. They intimidate to buy time and reduce pressure. But when it comes to real action, they tend to avoid direct confrontation with NATO or other powerful nations. That's why Biden and the allies aren't afraid to move forward. It's a strategic move that demonstrates strength and resolve without giving in to blackmail. And you and I both know the only way to stop an aggressor is to stand firm and not fear their empty threats. Moreover, ATACMS is a formidable weapon that outshines systems like Russia's Iskander in several key ways. First, it's about precision. Thanks to GPS guidance, ATACMS has a margin of error of just a few yards, whereas Russian counterparts often miss their targets. Second, ATACMS missiles are launched from standard platforms like HIMARS and M270, which Ukraine is already actively using. This means integrating the new missiles doesn't require additional training or modifications to existing equipment.
different types of terrains that we haven't been able to in the past. For example, mountainous and urban terrains. This was not originally able to be done.
Of course, there are downsides too. For instance, the number of ATACMS missiles the U.S. can supply is limited. This isn't a mass production weapon like standard artillery shells, plus their cost is significantly higher, making each shot incredibly valuable. Other systems like Tomahawk cruise missiles have greater range and payloads, but they can't be launched from HIMARS. ATACMS, on the other hand, offer versatility in a compact format. That's the missile's main advantage. It's highly effective in tactical warfare where speed, precision, and mobility are critical. How can this change the game? Drastically. You know how things are right now? Russians think their supply depots, command centers, and bases deep behind the front lines are untouchable. But now, bam, all that becomes a target. For example, they're storing ammunition hundreds of miles from the front line. But now that won't help anymore because ATACMS can reach even those spots. Can you imagine the panic among the occupiers? I can already see them scrambling to hide wherever they can. When Biden announced this decision, reactions were mixed. Ukraine was thrilled, while Russia was in shock, spewing threats like, "This is a red line, and we'll respond." But let's be real. These red lines don't scare anyone anymore. The world has long understood that the only way to deal with Russia is through strength. The most important part, Ukrainians now have the real opportunity not just to defend themselves, but to strike the enemy in a way that leaves no chance for recovery. Now we wait for the first results, but it's already clear that this is a game changer. Ukraine is growing stronger while Russia is beginning to realize its days as a major threat are numbered. I don't know about you, but I can already see Biden's decision going down in history. This isn't just aid, it's a step toward justice. What do you think about all this? Am I right that this is a true turning point? Or do you see any risks I might have missed? That's right, the tensions between the United States and Russia are reaching a peak as Ukraine launched a secret U.S. missile strike on Russia this week. The attack targeted one of the most important defense positions in Russia. This is why the convenient airbase has become dangerous for Russian planes, and now they'll have to fly longer distances and, accordingly, break down faster. But still, if we're talking about a missile strike, the following questions remain. How was it planned? What kind of missiles were used? How did the U.S. agree to this? Let me explain. In the context of current events, it's very important to recall the concept of the Cold War. It was a global confrontation between the U.S. and the USSR. They didn't fight directly, but they competed in everything. In ideology, in production, in weapons, and even in space exploration. At that time, both sides were actively building up their nuclear arsenals, putting pressure on each other. Both countries trained professional spies and spied on each other. Many people think that this whole affair lasted until the collapse of the USSR, but no, the Cold War is still going on. Only now it's entered a more active phase. Because of the war that began in Ukraine, the United States has the opportunity to strike directly at Russia with its weapons, albeit with the hands of the Ukrainian military, and recent events confirm this. The United States is actively supplying Ukraine with weapons, including anti-tank systems, anti-aircraft systems, artillery systems, and much more. It allows the Ukrainian army to effectively counter Russian forces. In essence, the United States is fighting Russia with someone else's hands by providing Ukrainian soldiers with the means to conduct combat operations. You can say that this is bad, but on the other hand, without the support of the Allies, it would be much more difficult for Ukraine.
But in reality, it's a weapon of war designed to destroy an enemy's capacity to fight.
At the same time, the United States and the EU imposed tough economic sanctions on Russia, which seriously affected the Russian economy. Russia is in political isolation. Many countries have reduced diplomatic contacts, which is also a clear consequence of the fact that the Cold War between the United States and Russia has entered its peak phase of almost open confrontation. The United States supports Ukraine by providing it with weapons and aid, which effectively makes this conflict an indirect war between the United States and Russia. Recently, secret information sources have disclosed that Ukraine has launched a devastating missile strike on Russian territory with U.S. missiles. A new strike was carried out on a strategically important facility at the base of Russian fighters and bombers in an undisclosed city. This news is still not covered anywhere, but we know the consequences. One of the key defense positions of the Russian Federation was destroyed, and all thanks to the accurate work of the HIMARS and its experimental PRSM missile. A similar strike occurred earlier. On the night of July 10, 2024, U.S. HIMARS systems and PRSM missiles were used to strike strategic targets in Russia. These high-precision and long-range missiles were launched from Ukrainian territory and flew 290 miles to the enemy airbase at a speed of over 2,250 miles per hour, striking several critical facilities, including command centers and ammunition depots. This forced the Russian army to redirect significant resources to protect its positions. This was the first major operation using American weapons to attack directly on Russian territory.
Once you've taken the decision to launch it, then it might be a significant amount of time before it hits its target. You might want to change your mind, but with most cruise missiles these days, you don't have that option.
The use of the HIMARS systems and the PRSM missiles was a real shock to the international community. These systems are known for their high accuracy and range, making them one of the most effective modern weapons. The HIMARS can launch both missiles and guided munitions, while PRSMs are capable of hitting targets up to 310 miles away with extreme accuracy, making them ideal for strategic strikes. These missiles can even carry cluster munitions, the impact of which would easily wipe out not just a Russian base, but an entire city.
We recognize a need to develop a unitary type of warhead instead of the bombless that could minimize the collateral damage on the targets that we were going after.
The consequences of this strike could seriously exacerbate the already tense situation between the two countries, and the covert nature of the strike adds to the complexity, raising questions about the U.S. motives. Since both sides have a powerful military force, the risk of retaliation is high. The whole world is waiting with bated breath for Russia's reaction, and it's already known. Last time, after the HIMARS attack, Moscow immediately accused Washington of direct military aggression, which led to an escalation of the diplomatic situation. Russia has severed diplomatic relations with a number of Western countries and announced that it'll step up its retaliatory measures. The UN Security Council convened an emergency session to discuss further steps. The attack on Russian territory using American HIMARS systems and PRSM missiles was an important landmark in the conflict. This event demonstrated the readiness of the United States and its allies to provide more active military support to Ukraine, which in turn led to serious military, diplomatic, and economic consequences. The situation in the region continues to be extremely tense, and further events will depend on the response of Russia and the international community. I think it's clear that relations between the U.S. and Russia have reached a critical point, and the future is becoming increasingly uncertain. The strike also raised questions about the role of other countries in the conflict and whether they'll be drawn into the fray as the situation develops. This incident could lead to a large-scale escalation of the conflict between the United States and Russia. The latter is likely to respond to the attack, which could escalate into a direct military clash between the two nuclear powers, affecting not only Ukraine, but also other countries in the region, drawing them into hostilities. The U.S. and its allies are likely to increase economic sanctions against Russia, further weakening its economy. Russia's economic isolation may push it to develop stronger relations with China and other countries that don't support Western sanctions. The United States is in the process of strengthening its position in Europe, for example, by providing Poland with a $2 billion loan to purchase military equipment such as Abrams tanks and fighter jets. It's difficult to overestimate the impact of this event on world politics and international relations, as it can change the global balance of power. We can only wait and see. What do you think about this shocking scenario? Share your opinion in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with further news updates. I'll try to get videos out as soon as possible with the latest news, even before it hits the news feed. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.